by Tri-County. No.
No? I think it does.
Oh, do you think he does? Yeah, I think a lot of kids do. She's going in fourth grade. That's very nice. Seven kids to rent the house.
Let the record reflect, we have reconvened with all members present. Melissa Honahan is absent excused. For those who are able, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I ask you to remain standing after the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And take a moment to remember longtime Madison residents we lost over the last few weeks. It was just last month we recognized Bob Coltis with the Mayor's Legacy Award, and he passed away at home after a long illness on March 2nd at the age of 88. Survived by his wife of 64 years, Kathy, as well as his son David, and David's wife Helen, his daughter Linda, and 2 grandchildren. Bob was born in Madison in a family home on Greenwood, and interesting to know, his grandfather, Dr. Aldo Bliss Coltis, delivered him into the world. Bob attended Madison Public Schools, attended the RCA Institute in New York City, and attained his associate's degree in electronics from Union College. Worked locally repairing radios and televisions for Madison residents, including Mrs. Dodge, in the 1950s. He served in the Navy Reserves from 57 to 64. 1959, he married Kathy Scull at the Methodist Church in Madison, and shortly afterwards he began work at Fairchild Laboratories, eventually established himself in sales, no surprise. They moved for a short time to Virginia for training, then he was transferred to Portland, Oregon, and to Huntington Valley until 1966. They finally returned home to Madison, moving into Kathy's childhood home, and they lived there. He lived there for the rest of his life, and obviously Kathy's still there. In 1973, Bob and Kathy decided to start their own business and opened a Speed instant printing franchise in Morristown, and eventually left the franchise and changed the name of the business to Print Shop. Joined Rotary in 74, Morristown Rotary in 74, served as president in 78, district governor in 85, and Rotary International Board of Directors in the 90s. He was an honorary member of the Madison Club, and Bob and Kathy welcomed many young people from around the world. Rotary Exchange student. Over the years, they hosted 25 to 30 students for about 6 months each, and had many short-term exchanges also, and remained in touch with many of the students. Bob was on the board of directors in Madison Y from 78 to 91, board chair 85 to 89. As mentioned in the proclamation, he was instrumental in transforming the old Lucy Hampton School into the FM Kirby Child Care Center. And as it says in his obituary, while he was a strong advocate of the YMCA mission, he spent his time at the Y in a suit and tie, never to be seen on an exercise bike or in the pool. And Bob was also on the board of trustees at the Madison Public Library. Kathy visited 32 countries. And for those that know Bob, and as I mentioned before, he could take up a room with his laugh, life advice, and presence. Sorely missed by so many of his friends. Then Florence Aquino, long-time Madison resident, passed away on March 3rd, 99, just weeks away from what would have been her 100th birthday. She's survived by her daughter Patricia and her husband Frank, and 2 grandchildren, previously by her husband of 48 years, Alphonse, and his son Robert. She was born in Morristown, and raised there, and attended Morristown High School. After high school, she worked at the office of M. Epstein, and married and started a family. And she's proud that 3 generations of her family worked for Epstein's, her mother, herself, and her daughter. She married her husband Alphonse in 1946, and they settled right here in Madison where they raised their family. And Al worked at the family business C&C Motors, and they was very proud to call Madison home for 78 years. He was also a proud member of the Thursday Morning Club and also active at the St. Vincent Borough Church. And then Mary Brocaglia, a longtime resident of Madison, passed away on March 4th. As it says, she was 97.5 years old. Survived by 2 daughters, Pamela, and her husband Michael, Susan, and her partner Milt, 2 sons, Thomas and Richard, 4 grandchildren, and 3 great-grandchildren. She was deceased by her husband Albert and her granddaughter Marissa. Born in Chatham in 1926. She was born prematurely and was one of the first babies saved by an incubator. One of the first introduced to Newark in 1926. After graduating from Chatham High School, she went into the nursing program at St. Michael's Hospital. Despite being told she was too small a frame to be a nurse. And she was chosen to be the ribbon cutting for the new Morristown Memorial Hospital at the time. She married her husband Albert in 1956, and they settled in Madison at that time, where they raised her 4 children. She was active in St. Vincent's, and she's certainly loved by many in the church. She loved jigsaw puzzles and still had one going right up to the end. And then Gloria Neck, of age 91, passed away on the 28th, born in Spain, married her husband Alfred in Madrid in the mid-1950s, as he was working as a civil engineer, rebuilding roads and bridges after World War II. They had a daughter in 1955. Her daughter came to the United States early in 56. New Jersey became her new home, and she and her husband Al moved to Madison in 1967. Her husband died in 1993. She was survived by her 2 daughters, Gloria, Teresa, and her son Carlos, 6 grandchildren, and 7 grandchildren, big grandchildren. And lastly, Joseph Izzo, lifelong Madison resident, passed away on the 27th February 92. Behind his wife of 62 years, Anne, 3 sons, Joseph, Stephen, and Daniel, 1 daughter, Jean, 10 grandchildren, and 2 great-grandchildren. Born in Morristown at 31, grew up in Madison, attended Madison High School. After high school, enlisted in the United States Army, served our country in the Korean War, and then worked for the New Jersey Department of Transportation for 32 years. He met his wife, Anne, at Hanover Lane, bowling alley in East Hanover, and they married in 1961 and stayed in Madison to raise her family. He was been known for his impressive vegetable garden, enjoyed sharing vegetables with neighbors and friends. He was also a member of St. Vincent Garden Parish. Let's take a moment to remember Bob Fultus, Florence Casino, Mary Brocaglia, Gloria Neck, and Joseph Izzo, and let's pass our thoughts on to the families and friends that leave behind. Thank you. Have a motion for the executive minutes of February 26, 2024.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And a motion for the regular minutes of February 26, 2024.
Moved.
Second.
Any discussion or corrections? All in favor?
Aye.
Welcome all, and apologize for the slight delay at the beginning, and to those watching at home, sorry for the delay. We are here having lost an hour's sleep over the weekend, and the extra daylight is nice, but the transition is always tough, especially since I haven't recovered from the extra day in February. You know, that leap year gets me every time. A couple of things going on the last couple of weeks. Last Wednesday, I cut the ribbon at the Stay Salon on Waverly Place. In addition to Madison Chamber members, we were joined by former council member John Hoover, sitting right here, and also Chatham Borough Police Chief Brian Gibbons. And Chief Gibbons was there to support his sister Tracy, the owner of Stay Salon. So stop by and please congratulate Tracy and welcome Chief Gibbons' sister to town. And many people know, especially if you have young children, this month is Read Across America. So I was at Torrey J on Wednesday and Central Avenue on Thursday for reading night. Always great fun to read to the families, and I was given several books between the 2 schools, with my favorite being Duck for President. It's a fun or maybe quack read, but it was enjoyable. So, and I'll be at Kings Road next month to read. And on Saturday, the weather wasn't so great, but the turnout impressive for the annual Morris County St. Patrick's Parade in Morristown. As I marched, I saw a good contingent of Madison residents that weathered the cool temperatures and drizzle. And shifting gears a little bit, one of the tasks I had over the last couple of weeks was signing Madison Police certificates of commendation for their annual recognition of superior effort. And I was impressed as I read these certificates because each one described the event that warranted the recognition. And of course, there were a few that talked about great work on arrests, such as the break-in at Gerlach's, the bank fraud issue, and others. But what really stood out was noticing the great work in life-saving efforts. This including noticing people in distress and quickly rendering aid. There was also a couple that noted that police officers noticing behavior that were indicative of mental health issues. With the officers intervening, providing quick action, they very likely save lives by preventing suicide. So we're certainly very proud of the support that they provide to those in crisis. And a very different note, yesterday I looked out my window and I saw a couple walking with a litter grabber in a bag. And I don't know whether they were inspired by my routine of walking through town with my litter grabber as I try to keep things clean, or they started on their own. It was certainly great to see. So I highly recommend the activity of cleaning as you walk. It's it's kind of very rewarding, and I think it'll be, if you start it tomorrow, it'll be extra special because after the wind of the last 24 hours, and especially when it coincided with the wind paper and cardboard pickup for District 1, there's going to be plenty to pick up. And another part of my lecture here is I don't mind the wind-blown litter, but I have to say I'm getting tired of picking up cigarette butts from those who think our sidewalks and streets are one big ashtray. So if you can't quit, please extinguish your cigarette and put it in the garbage. And I do have a lot to cover today, so I apologize. You will hear shortly that we have a resolution to support the reauthorization of Transportation Trust Fund, of the Transportation Trust Fund, known as the TTF. This is a dedication of a portion of our gas tax support road projects. 50% of the revenue that is generated go back to local projects at the county and municipal level. This has been invaluable to Madison and all towns across the state. Over the last round, we received over $1 million to support such projects as the Green Avenue safety improvements, mill and overlay projects, and road reconstruction for such as Garfield, Prospect, and Woodland. These projects would either have been postponed or fully covered by Madison residents. So in a way, this gas tax is a property tax savings initiative. But what is different about this reauthorization is it also takes into consideration EVs through an annual fee, so they will pay their share. So we encourage the legislature to quickly approve these the funds so roads and bridges and traffic safety projects across the state can continue. And I'm going off script a little bit, but one thing that went through committee today and we're following very closely is the affordable housing legislature. I will probably in a future meeting go in more detail, but we have very strong concerns at the fact that this is being rushed through without a time deadline that is needed to rush through. It is going to be the commitment of the municipalities across the state that deliver the valuable and needed affordable housing for residents. And yet, municipalities across the state have been cut out of the discussions for this bill. So I will be reaching out and will encourage others to reach out. Yes, we need the legislation to address this. Let's take our time and get it right, because doing it wrong could ruin this state with overdevelopment and stressing on infrastructure. On a much more cheerful note, an additional $4.1 million in federal grant funding has been added to our growing total for the preservation of the Drew Forest. So thanks to the joint efforts of Congresswoman Sherrill and Senator Booker for submitting this request as part of their community funding project initiatives, which were passed last week by the House and Senate and signed into law by President Biden over the weekend. This additional money brings our total of federal and county grants to preserving the Drew Forest to $9,116,279. And that odd amount at the end is from the federal grant. I have to say, I did play pick 4 last week of 6279. It didn't get more money from Drew Forest, but I did try. We'll continue to work in good faith with the leadership of Drew University to reach a deal to preserve the Drew Forest, and remain committed to continue to apply for additional federal, state, and county funding that would assist us in the funding of our purchase offer for the preservation of the forest. And lastly, Employee of the Month. And if I can have a drum roll from our person behind the screens in the back, because our Employee of the Month is Communications Director Michael Pelessier. While the Personnel Director was out to care for a mother and then for bereavement leave, Michael stepped up to keep that department running. He handled the process of hiring several new employees, which included scheduling interviews, making employment offers, and certainly without this help, the hiring of these new employees would have been delayed by several weeks, and they might not have become new employees if that got delayed. So, Michael, thank you very much for your dedication. And Police Officer Manager Christy Keel's 25th anniversary is today. So, if you see Christy in the office at Public Safety, please congratulate her. And that is all I have, and I apologize again for the long list. Move on to Public Safety, Council President Range.
Thank you, Mayor. From the Police Department, on March 4th, the Arrive New Jersey program officially began at the Madison Police Department. This program adds social work resources to be deployed as part of our department's overall response options as calls for assistance come in. Our social worker, Adam, began his shift 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. and has already been seeing immediate results and instant feedback. We're very excited to see where this program continues to take us. On March 5th, Madison Police held its annual all-hands department meeting and awards presentation, as the mayor referenced. 26 commendations were issued to officers for their actions during the past 2 years, for actions above and beyond the call of duty. A job well done, and congratulations to all the officers who received commendations. On March 6th, the Madison Police Department Command Unit met with Madison High School officials on the ongoing security enhancements on the front vestibule for the high school. We appreciate the collaboration with the school administration and with the security upgrades that are forthcoming. And this Friday, March 15th, Madison officers will be taking part in the Law Enforcement Night at Menon Arena. This event runs from 7 to 9 p.m. and is open to the public. It's always a great way, a great night, and visiting police departments are present to tell the public about their department and themselves as officers as well. And tonight from the fire department. The fire department reports that in February, the fire department responded to 18 general alarms, 24 still alarms, 29 investigations, and 48 medical calls. That's a total of 119 calls for the month of February. It's that extra leap day that you know. On March 5th, a fire engine was requested to Main Street in Chatham Borough for a reported fire in an apartment. Engine 1 arrived and advanced a hose line to the second floor where a kitchen fire was found. The cause of the fire was found to be combustibles stored in the lower drawer of the oven that in this particular case turned out to be a broiler. So please be cautious as you're storing items in that lower part of your oven. On March 10th, the fire department received an interesting call from a local urgent care. The urgent care had been struggling for some time to remove a ring stuck on a patient's finger and actually broke their tooling in the process. The staff had heard that Madison firefighters and the Madison Fire Department had a knack for removing stuck rings and asked if they could send the patient over to Madison Fire Headquarters. At her arrival, the ring was safely removed within 15 minutes. And lastly, some good news on the financial front tonight. The New Jersey Department of Community Affairs has awarded a grant to the fire department for a total of $55,000. I think this was part of Chief Wickman's budget presentation as well. The American Rescue Plan Firefighter Grant Program is used to purchase personal protection gear, and the fire department plans to use these funds to purchase additional turnout coats, pants, boots, and helmets for firefighters. And lastly tonight from the Joint Court, in February 2024, there was a slight decrease in caseload versus the same period last year. In addition, Madison Borough has had a decrease of cases and issues in February compared to January 2024. Like in Madison, overall the Joint Court, including all 4 police departments, had an overall decrease in caseloads from February 2024 compared to the prior year. Thanks, Mayor. That's all tonight.
Thank you. And Finance Borough Clerk, Ms. Ehrlich.
Thank you, Mayor. The Clerk's Office has the following announcements. In anticipation of the June 4th primary election, the filing deadline for nomination petitions for a county committee, as well as municipal office, is March 25th, 2024. Candidates from municipal office must file nominating petitions in the office of the Borough Clerk by 4 p.m. on March 25th, the 71st day next preceding the day of the June 4th primary election for the general election. Nomination petitions for independent general election candidates and school board election candidates are filed with the county clerk before 4 p.m. on June 4th, the day of the primary election. These forms are available in the clerk's office. Switching to finance, tonight we will have our 6th presentation on the budget. Over the past several months, we have discussed capital, revenues, utilities, and open space. On February 12th, we had a presentation on the municipal budget and fund balance. On February 26th, we then had a number of detailed and information-rich presentations from the department heads. As we've discussed in all of these council meetings in the run-up to tonight's final hearing, the budget is one of the most important decisions that council makes. The process revolves around the 2014 strategic planning guidelines, and we continue to be guided by this important document thanks to the excellent work of our former council member, Ben Wolkowitz. Tonight we will cover the utilities and the municipal budget one final time. We will also go over the strategic planning guidelines in detail. Hopefully we will have a consensus to move forward and direct the staff to draft the official municipal budget document that is to be introduced at the March 25th council meeting. Assuming that happens, the official document will then be posted and available for review by the public for 28 days as required by state statute. Towns like Madison that are in excellent fiscal health are permitted to self-certify the budget for 2 years in a row, but the 3rd year the budget must be reviewed by the state. This year Madison can self-certify. Towns that declared a special emergency in 2021 due to the pandemic are also required to be reviewed by the state every year. Fortunately, because of prudent fiscal planning, we were able to avoid declaring a special emergency during the economic upheaval of the pandemic. We strive to be transparent with our budget process. Not all local governments publicly talk about the budget until the state document is introduced. As a reminder, all of our presentations, along with a number of other documents, including the audit, the annual debt statement, and the annual financial statement, and other similar documents are available on RoseNet. And I want to say a special thank you to Jim. I know we have more thanks to offer as the process continues to unfold, but getting us to this point as we have our final hearing before the budget introduced has been a big effort. And I want to thank you for leading that, Jim. A couple of comments from the finance and purchasing departments. The unaudited annual financial statement, or AFS, has been completed and sent to the state of New Jersey. This document is available on RoseNet. It is a precursor to the audit report, which comes out later this year. And from the purchasing department, we'll make note of a couple once-a-year large payments on the voucher list for tonight's vote. Larger apartment and condominium complexes such as General Wayne, Rolling Hills Court, and the Madison Commons pay full taxes to the borough, but they do not get full services. They typically have private companies that plow their roads and collect their garbage and recyclables. State statute permits these property owners to get reimbursed for certain expenses. The apartment complexes submit all of their paperwork to the purchasing department, and the borough calculates the reimbursement, which is based on the borough's costs for these services. Special thank you to Stacy Dooley in the purchasing department for working on this important annual project. That's all tonight, Mayor.
Very much. Public Works and Engineering, Mr. Landrigan.
Thank you, Mayor. Sewer jetting is continuing. The locations are posted on social media and the borough website. Emergency sewer line and manhole repairs were completed on Rosedale Avenue. The roads department is patching potholes and repairing curbs. Mechanical services are preparing equipment for maintaining the parks, sports, and recreation fields. The Parks Department is readying fields for spring sports. And finally, the Sewer Department responded for the third time in the last month to issues at the Lorraine Road pump station. They asked residents not to flush wipes, floss, and hygiene products. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. And with Utilities and Community Affairs, Mr. Helen Budis.
Hold on. Got it now.
There we go.
You didn't have to throw anything at me, Eric. Got it. So, thanks, Mayor. Hello, members of the community. The Electric Department. First, we would like to offer our best wishes to our electric utility superintendent, Jim Mattina, who's recovering at home after knee replacement surgery. Foreman Dave Artiglaire is serving as acting superintendent, doing a great job in Jim's absence. Our electric crews are busy in town tonight due to the high winds. We have poles with transformers on Community Place and Cook Avenue damaged by the weather, currently being replaced to restore electric service to the residents of the affordable housing development owned by the Madison Housing Authority on Community Place. Our standby crews will remain on high alert in Madison this evening. We're so fortunate to have that service available for our town. We're experiencing extended supply chain delays to purchase transformers, with delivery delayed for up to 2 years. Our practice has been to replenish our inventory on a regular basis to ensure we can always meet the needs of our residents and businesses. No need to be alarmed because we do have transformers now to service our current needs. Late last week, electric crews pruned branches from primary, secondary, and house services due to the advanced weather forecast of high winds. So again, very proactive department, fortunately for us. Our standby crews were busy late last week responding to emergency markout requests, down wires, and no power calls. Madison always has 2 electric crew members on standby duty for after-hours responses. Crews removed the damaged pole and set a new Class 2 45-foot riser pole on Lorraine Road for a new tie point to serve the neighborhood. New poles are planned to be installed on Walnut Street, Bridgedale Avenue, Greenwood Avenue, and 1 additional pole on Lorraine Road. On to the water utility. Didn't have as much activity. There's continuing work at Well B for the redevelopment and upgrades that should be finished hopefully by the end of the second quarter of this year. The D-Well booster room was painted. An inspection, testing, and flushing of a new main was completed at 286 to 294 Main Street, and a new main is now in service. I don't know which building that is, sorry. 2 water services have been shut off and disconnected for new development, and all normal work, markouts, shutouts, shut-offs, and meter replacements continue around the borough. And from the, I'm going to read the report in place of Councilwoman Honahan. She's not here tonight. There's a lot going on in town. This is from the Downtown Development Commission. The Director of Business Development is Lisa Ellis. The Downtown Development Commission's next regular meeting will be held on Thursday, March 21st, 7:15 in the second floor committee room in Hartley Dodge, this building. The public is welcome and invited to attend. The Downtown Development Commission plans to reinvent the Madison Farmers Market for the 2024 season. It will now be called the Madison Farm and Artisan Market, and it will be held on Saturdays from May 25th through December 14th in the Prospect Street parking lot from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. That's the lot next to the Ambulance Corps building in front of the train station, the big parking lot. I think that will be a good alternative for a weekend venue. The hope is the new format will allow for greater participation closer to the heart of Madison. Information and applications have been sent to prospective vendors. Vendors should contact Lisa Ellis at ddc@rosenet.org for more information. So there's just 1 week left to get your tickets. The Taste of Madison 2024 event, Rose City's annual fine food and drink tasting extravaganza, takes place on Monday, March 18th, 1 week from today, like I just said. The new venue for 2024 edition of the Taste is at the Madison Hotel. I'm anxious to actually see that myself. I haven't been there since they've done a renovation. VIP tickets are $125 each. VIP tickets will feature early admission and access to all vendors at 6 p.m. In addition, VIPs can participate in a cooking demonstration with food and wine tastings and will receive a special gift bag and an entry into a special raffle. General admission tickets are priced at $85 and entry to the event will begin at 7 p.m. The Taste of Madison features a silent auction, a tricky tray, and a 50-50 raffle. The proceeds from the Taste of Madison benefit local charities, business development, and civil improvements in Madison. The organizers of the Taste of Madison are the Madison Chamber of Commerce, the Madison Downtown Development Commission, and the Rotary Club of Madison. Tickets are now available at Gary's Wine and Marketplace at 121 Market Street in Madison and www.tasteofmadison.org. Tickets must be purchased in advance. Guests must be 21 years of age or older, and the recommended attire is business casual. You can actually book your tickets online, so they're reserved for you and you can go pick them up before the event from Gary's. The Downtown Development Commission launched a total refresh of the event formerly known as May Day last year. The event is now called Madison Green and Clean. The event will again incorporate a townwide beautification day on Saturday, April 27th from 9 to 2 p.m. All of the community is welcomed and encouraged to attend. The rain day will be Saturday, April 28th. That same day, the annual Arbor Day celebration will kick off the event. This event also now features a focus on eco-friendly initiatives. Information on sponsorship, donation, and volunteering is available on RoseNet. The Chamber of Commerce. The Madison Chamber of Commerce will host some of the community's favorite events again this spring. Right now, the Find Shelley the Easter Egg Scavenger Hunt has begun. It started this weekend. Easter Fun Fest will take place on Saturday, March 23rd from 11 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. The Madison Community Arts Center. There's always a lot going on there. Multicolor Viewpoints is Katie Truck's multimedia work. It continues to exhibit at the center's Rosium Gallery through March 30th. Mr. Truck will be hosting a closing reception on Saturday, March 30th from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. Gallery hours are posted on the Madison Community Arts Center website in the weekly calendar section. The Summit Film Society will show Lo Capitano, a film about African immigration to Europe, on Sunday, March 17th at 5 p.m. And the Spotlight Kids Company will present The Music Man Kids, March 15th to 17th, this coming weekend. Friday and Saturday night shows are 7 p.m. Saturday and Sunday matinees are at 2 p.m. Tickets will be available on the MCAC, Morris Cultural Arts Center website. And some really fun events are Wednesday open mics. That's coming up. March 13, music open mic. Go and show your talents and perform in front of other attendees. March 20th is comedy open mic. And March 27th is Yes And. It's featuring a writer's workshop and literary open mic. Then there was something that happened on March 6th, which already happened. Events for the entire year can be viewed on the Morris Cultural Arts Center landing page at madisonartsnj.org/MCAC. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. Your report, and see, March 20th, comedy night, so I'll have to start practicing. And we'll now go to health. Mr. Forte.
Thank you, Mayor. From the Health Department,
A bit of a COVID update. The CDC has now changed COVID isolation guidance and has lumped it into general respiratory guidance. The CDC's new guidance says that individuals with any respiratory illness, including COVID and flu, should stay home until they are fever-free for 24 hours without the use of fever-reducing medication, and until they feel better where most symptoms have decreased. New Jersey has yet to officially change their guidance in accordance with this. This is guidance only, and each school and child care center will be responsible for determining what their own individual policies will be. The CDC is now recommending an additional dose of COVID vaccines in individuals 65 and over, and the Westfield Regional Health Department, which provides services for Madison, is still offering free vaccines to all, regardless of insurance status. There are upcoming clinics for all residents aged 6 months and over from 4 to 6 p.m. on March 14th, 21st, and 28th. Information can be found by visiting www.westfieldnj.gov/health or by calling 908-789-4070. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Now move on to communications and petitions.
None received, Mayor.
All right, we're now on to our first of two invitations for public comment. This one is limited to our agenda items and also the resolutions that are part of our consent agenda. Our agenda discussions are electric shuttle bus for the seniors, and the second one is the 2024 municipal budget hearing and strategic planning guidelines. And these are the resolutions you may comment on. Resolution 103 is professional service contract NJ Edge for extraordinary unspecified services related to cyber security. And this is part of the proposal of $45,756. Resolution 104 is authorized submission of Morris County Historic Preservation Grant regarding the Madison Masonic Lodge, and this is 50% of the purchase price of $1,125,000. Resolution 105 is declaring Madison Green and Clean Day 2024 to be held on Saturday, April 27th. Resolution 106 is authorizing the Madison Farm and Artisan Market for 2024, as already reported. Resolution 107 is authorizing a shared service agreement with the Borough of Kenilworth to provide information technology services, and this is a renewed contract. Resolution 108 is appointing Robert Dunn to the position of fire captain in paid division of in the Madison Fire Department. Resolution 109 is supporting legislation A4011 and Senate legislation S2931, which reauthorizes the New Jersey Transportation Trust Fund, as I had already reported on. Resolution 110 is authorized submission of grant application to New Jersey Department of Community Affairs for the all-accessible playground at Dodge Field. And that is it. So you may comment on those resolutions or the two agenda items. If you wish to comment on any of those, please step forward, state your name, your address, and the agenda item or resolution you're addressing, and try to keep your comments to 3 minutes, but we'll give you 1 minute grace. If you wish to comment, please step forward. Seeing none, I close this part of the meeting and we move on to agenda discussions. Jim and Peter.
Okay, well, we've been working on replacing the senior bus for a number of years. It is now 11 or 12 years old, I'm not sure, has almost 100,000 miles on it, and apparently has a maintenance history which calls for replacing the bus. And it currently takes 12 people in 2 wheelchairs, seldom full except for twice monthly trips that are made to Walmart where they take a few more people, and those are the times when they use the full capacity. Our range requirement on this bus is not great. The average day for the bus is 35 miles. We found one day last year where they went 60 miles in a day, but the average is 35 to 40 miles a day. So that's an issue with electric buses. which typically are 100 miles or less in their one battery charge. We've applied for a number of grants to NJDEP. In fact, we even applied for one grant to NJ Transit to see if they would lease us a bus. None of those came through until December this year, when we were granted a bus under the NJ, a grant under the NJ DEP's Stop the Soot program, which it comes from the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, a multi-state initiative that New Jersey is part of. This grant is structured to pay approximately the cost difference between an electric bus and a gas or diesel powered bus. It's not a grant to pay the entire bus. So for smaller buses, as the slide says, the grant is for $15,000. And for the larger buses, which right now are very expensive and they're typically $300,000 items, they pay for the class 4 buses $160K. One requirement of the grant that we received was that we completely decommission the old gasoline bus. We have negotiated to have that requirement removed so that we will be able to use the old bus as a backup or a standby or a bus for when we have large group. Next slide, please. Okay, the available buses break down into 3 categories. The first is what we're calling upfit E450 buses. These are buses built on Ford E450 chassis. And a third party takes that E450 Ford product with its gasoline engine, rips out the gasoline drivetrain, puts in electric motors and batteries, and then sends it off to another company that puts the bus body in it. In the chart, you can see we've tried to list those various organizations for the 3 that we investigated. There might be some more out there, but we looked at 3 of them in some degree of detail, had some Zooms with them, and talked to them in detail. And those are all $250,000 to $300,000 buses, and we would receive a large grant for those buses. One issue is how easy are they to procure? Are they on a state contract or not? So we looked at that as well, and we were concerned about maintenance. Will maintenance be nearby or local? And in all these cases, there are New Jersey-based maintenance locations for all these buses. Our concern about this is that all of these companies are smaller companies that were started over the last 5 or so years as startups to go after this market. And what's going to happen at some time in the future is that Ford or Chevy will say, we will produce a 450 size chassis with electric motors in it ourselves. And that'll put at risk these companies. And so there's concern about maintenance, there's concern about warranties. Will these companies be there in 5 years to take care of the bus and the electrics of the bus, which is the key issue. So that's what we've talked about here in the bottom. And that's one category of bus. On the next slide, there is one company that makes buses that are built from the ground up as electric buses. It's Green Power. They're in California, I think. And they also build buses in Kentucky. And we had a demo of these buses in 2020. I don't know if anybody here was at the garage for that demo. They built several hundred of these buses, and they're out west. However, we did a little bit of a financial deep dive into the company, and they do appear not to be in very good shape. And so we'd have the same concerns about that bus if we bought their bus. It would be almost as big as the other one. Again, same kinds of concerns. You see some of the floor plans and layouts here. On the next slide, you'll see a third option that we're exploring, which is our recommended option, which is that Ford has taken what is essentially their E350 chassis. They turned it into something called a transit chassis, which you see plenty of as delivery trucks and workman vans going around town. And they now are producing an E-Transit, which is an electrified version of that, complete from Ford, with somebody else putting the bus body on it. And again here, the bus company in this case is a company called Forest River, which is a very large vehicle company that makes lots of buses and special purpose vehicles. The size is a little bit smaller and the price is a lot less. It's a lighter weight Class 2 vehicle, and we would obtain only the $15,000 grant for this vehicle. But again, the net outlay for the borough would be the same for any of these buses. Let's see, we had a demo of this bus about a week ago at the garage, and we had a test drive as well. Very smooth, enjoyable ride, and the dealer has already ordered 180 of these buses for distribution nationwide. It's a large dealer, reliable. They will be there in 5 years to take care of this and other buses. So they believe we can get one if we order it in the next month or two later this year. And this would be our recommendation. What makes this recommendation a little easier is the option of keeping the previous bus on the lot. Using the previous bus maybe once or twice a month if we need to keep it running as a backup and for larger groups. Anything I've forgotten?
No, you did great.
Okay.
You want to talk about this? This is your beautiful spreadsheet.
Oh, yes. A little spreadsheet here on the history for the senior bus last year and over its lifetime. Mileage on the first row, gallons consumed, tons of CO2 emissions attributable to that fuel consumption, and rough cost of that fuel at $3 a gallon. And then if that had been the current proposed electric vehicle, we would be using this much electricity, 3,037 kilowatt hours, or this over the lifetime of that bus, we would be emitting at the generator of that electricity those many tons of CO2, and we would be paying for electricity at that particular rate. These amounts here, so the electric bus would be saving us 9 tons a year of CO2 emissions and $3,000 a year of fueling costs. And in addition, there is a pretty good history now that these electric vehicles have a significantly lower maintenance burden than their predecessors, their gasoline predecessors. Now, how about you, Peter? Excellent.
I would just say the Ford Game Changer is smaller. It's you feel like you're in a seat in an airplane. So, Michael, if you go back one slide, it may be that we typically have only 6 people here, the passenger seat, and then others, depending on it. And that's normal for us to only have 6. It's only when we go to Walmart. So instead of going to Walmart twice a month, maybe we go to Walmart every week. So we have a few more trips going, but it would be just a more comfortable, smaller vehicle, easier for the driver to drive around and park. And quite frankly, the decision for us to recommend this is mostly driven, no pun intended, by it being a Ford warranty on a Ford drivetrain and Ford electronics and everything else. There's a lot of concern that someone just takes a vehicle, rips out the entire drivetrain and puts in some batteries and their motors, and then what happens 3 years from now when that company's not there. About $120,000, $130,000 is what it's going to cost us in any of these options, which is what it would cost us to replace the gas-powered senior van with another gas-powered senior van. So it seems like a logical choice for us to pursue this. We want to give this presentation to council to get your thoughts.
Thank you. So costs are similar with the grant. The savings on CO2 and fuel costs over the life for over 10 years would be impressive. Seating a little tight. Are we talking JetBlue airline or Spirit airline tight?
I was on United. I think they're pretty bad too. Well, yeah, I shouldn't say that publicly. I'll lose my miles. United Plus card. It's economy.
Okay.
It's not business class in terms of the spacing. But so often we only have 4, 5, 6 people in the bus, so the sides that have 2 seats, there'll be a single person sitting there. So, and we don't see it being an issue. We don't transport a wheelchair person that often, but it's something we really feel like we need to have in the vehicle. So we're going to continue to have it in the vehicle.
Bob?
Yeah, I guess the existing bus, it's past its useful life. I saw it was 11 years old and 91,000 miles. So realistically, its reliability has gone downhill.
Correct, and we're gonna, we have a wonderful mechanic staff.
Yeah.
And we're gonna ask them to keep it going, and they're gonna keep it going. But, if this goes well, who knows what we're gonna end up doing. I mean, I think this is gonna be an impressive vehicle that, we may down the road buy a second one shared with Chatham or something. Who knows? But
that's what I was getting at. I mean, the existing bus, we really shouldn't use anymore on a regular basis. It's purely just for backup.
Exactly, correct.
And then this makes perfect sense, because if you got to replace it because what you have isn't working properly anymore, then this is the right way to go.
Yes, sir.
Questions or comments? None?
This seems like a fairly good option to me. I really like the idea of going with Ford, a national brand, because of the issues that could arise going with a lesser-known vendor. I think that's very prudent for us, and I'm hoping that we'll get some traction out of this and expand this program.
Yes, and the cost of it we have not talked about or looked at, but we'll have some time to look to see if there's a sponsor that wants to. Our past van was sponsored by a local bank. We could look to have this new vehicle sponsored, and they could help defray the cost out of the borough's pocket of $125,000. So there's opportunities for sponsorship there if we're looking for.
So you took the words out of my mouth there. Sorry. Mic's on. Ready? You took the words out of my mouth with the sponsor. That's good. We got to do that in a few places. And then where are you going to charge it?
A DPW yard, probably.
So it's going to be parked there at night? Or
Yeah.
when it needs to be charged? Which
Yep.
might be every night.
That's the most logical place for it. It can be plugged in any one of our level 2 chargers.
Yeah. So if we do, potentially, or when we do make the Masonic Lodge a senior center, maybe we can put electric charging back to the senior center.
Yep.
Right? That'd be a good idea. More the merrier.
Yep.
Sure, maybe some seniors will be taking advantage of that too.
I mean, there's an argument to keep the bus nearer to here, Tom, because
Nearer to here.
the employee that works on getting the schedule from here and kind of works out of here. So we may end up putting it over at the fire department,
Okay.
public safety, the ambulance corps building, keeping it on the side here. We haven't figured that out yet. We want to keep it outside. That's basically kind of a general good rule of thumb with electric vehicles.
But regardless, a charger at the Masonic Lodge would be a good idea, so keep that on the radar. Rachel?
Thank you both for this presentation. I want to thank you, Peter, for your year-over-year effort to pursue this grant. I know it was a long time coming. You were very dogged trying to get a grant for this bus. And when it finally came through last year, it was like a breakthrough. So I appreciate not only your attention to this effort, but then the effort it took to get the demo bus and to do this analysis. It's just so much legwork, and I just want to thank you for making this decision an easier one by presenting all the facts in such a clear way, which is your style. So thank you for that. And thank you, Jim, for working with Peter to get us to this point from the borough's perspective. I feel like this has been a joint effort. And
He did all the work. I really did nothing.
Well-
He did all the research and everything. I was the nudge that said, what about this, what about that? So Peter deserves all the accolades. Thank you.
Well, I have to say that whenever I walked into Ken O'Brien's office and said, you should get electric this, or you should get electric that, or you should get he said, wait a minute. He said, you should get us an electric bus. That's the first vehicle that we should get. And I said, okay, Ken. And that's...
here we are.
Yes, all done.
And the good news is that we took delivery of the electric mower. I think that might have been announced at the last council meeting. So we have delivery of the electric mower, so we're able to see that at the same time we saw this bus a couple weeks back.
Well, I'm looking forward to getting a snazzy custom paint job on this bus. I hope we can, the way that we did with our Chevy Volts in town. And I think people will be really happy to have a clean, quiet, non-smelly bus driving around town, because it's really time to put the other one out to pasture.
The question in the weeds. I know some buses come with a noise generator because they're too quiet. Does this one?
Yes.
Okay. And so what I'm hearing is consensus to move forward with the process, but starting with working on a sponsor.
Correct, Mayor. We're gonna, once the budget is passed, appropriate dollars, look to place the order soon thereafter, and then while the order is placed, we'll look to obtain a sponsorship.
Sounds good. Very good. All good. All right. We'll move on to the budget.
Thank you, Mayor. As Councilwoman Ehrlich said, this is, I believe, the 6th presentation that we have on the budget. Tonight we're going to talk about updated schedules, and we're going to focus on our strategic planning guidelines. There's no vote tonight, but the hope is that we will have consensus this evening, because I've got a big state budget document that I have to draft. I basically create like 4 budgets. I create one in Edmonds, I create one for you to see, I create the user-friendly budget, and then I also create the state budget document. Thank you, Peter. So no vote tonight, but hopeful for consensus. Michael, if you go to the 3rd slide. Go to the 3rd slide, Michael, one more, apologize. This is the proposed schedule, and we're getting towards the end of it. Hopeful that we'll do budget introduction at the next meeting. Next slide is just our goals and important questions, which we have presented before, so I'm not going to go over them, but I do want to go over the next slide, which has a really cool picture of an incredibly old 75-year-old water meter that was recently replaced in town. The guys who replace the water meters, National Metering Services, replace hundreds of thousands of meters a year, and they were surprised at this. So it was installed at my church when the sanctuary was built in 1950. So it's been around a while. But in terms of summary comments with this budget, there's no reduction in services. The borough is taking over the EMT and now offering that as an ambulance service, which is a big lift. You've heard that from Chief Wickman. Fund balance is stabilized. We are able in this budget to finally set aside more budget and capital. New construction has generated additional tax revenue. We have reduced our reliance on municipal operations with the electric fund, which is something that we're shooting for, because we know next year and then the year after we're going to start to feel the impact of new electric procurement costs. Strategic guidelines are compliant or moving in the right direction. And we, in this budget, are fully funding the MRC carport. And I maybe should pose this as a question. Administration thinks we should take the revenue when we do get it in from the federal government. As you know, we're going to hopefully get $600,000 from the federal government for this through the direct pay, and we're anticipating getting over 15 years $1.1 million of SREC funds. If we fully fund the MRC carport, then those monies will be coming in over the years, and it may make sense. It makes sense in administrations to put that money in a reserve for the next sustainable project. So we want council to consider that. Don't need to make that decision this evening. And then the water meter replacement program. All those things are going on this year. Next slide, Michael. Concerns are affordable housing obligations. As Mayor Conley said, S50 is a serious bill that's going through the legislature that could increase our obligations significantly next year and the year after. We're looking and trying to make sure we have enough funds to save the Drew Forest. We've done great, but we need a certain amount of funds to be able to do that. Cost of electricity is increasing in 2025, new debt payments. Tax appeals, property taxes on office buildings are going down, electric utility substation upgrades, revow, the BOE referendum, and a reminder that the 2% property tax increase only generates $320,000 for the budget. So with that, we'll go to the budget document. the budget in brief. And this document is replicated and has been replicated for about 30 years. You can go on Rosenet and see something similar to this. We've changed it over the years, but you can see a very similar document and track what the borough has done budget-wise. This document changed slightly from the February 12 presentation. We had a little increase in sewage processing costs that we wanted to take into account. Quite honestly, it was actually an increase in state aid that we applied to the sewage treatment costs. We had a small reduction in other costs that allowed us to increase sewage appropriations towards sewage costs as well. And then we had the grant that was mentioned by Council President Range for Kyle. When we get a grant, it basically goes to the revenue side and the expense side. So the revenue shows up on line B8, which is grant revenue, and then the appropriation in this particular instance, the expense side shows up under department operating expenses and grants. So those are just basically minor modifications to this. I do want to point out that there's certain appropriations that are going up significantly, and then there are others that I can tell you are going up, but we're not increasing the budget on them. We're trying to manage the generation of fund balance, and we have new interest income that's coming in from the higher interest rates that has benefited our fund balance this year. But if you look, for example, at the B28, the Madison Chatham Joint Metered Sewage Processing, it's budgeted to go up 2.6%. I think you all know from your meetings with the joint meeting, it's going to go up by more than that. Our allocation is going up and their expenses are going up. But we are ratcheting back on that and being more precise in the budgeting and trimming away the little bits of that we can to keep the budget numbers down. So there are numbers like that throughout the budget that are important to note. Clearly, our health insurance is almost not going up in the budget. We had a little extra in there last year that generated fund balance. We're going to again be more precise with our budgeting, and so health is going up by 6%. We only have it going up by a very small amount. So all of these things are being done to try to manage our generation of fund balance and manage a tighter budget is probably the best way to say it. So, and that's the way we're able to keep that's one of the ways we're able to manage to keep the budget at 2% property tax increase. The next slide is fund balance, which has not changed. I'd like to go to the next slide, which is the electric utility budget. And there's just one change to this. The budget allocation for capital was increased. So that is, let's see, where is it here? Law contracts. E13 was increased from the prior budget significantly. We have a lot of electric utility capital expenses coming up, and we have almost nothing left in the electric utility capital fund. That's the lowest it's ever been at the beginning of a budget year. So we always have some money left over. We almost have nothing. So we increased that budget appropriation significantly. We can do it this year. We may not be able to do it next year or the year after with electric costs going up, so we figured it would be appropriate to put that money aside now. The water utility, the next slide, there's no changes there. Then I'd like to go to strategic planning guidelines and just recognize Councilman Wolkowitz there and his great smile, and just everything that he has done. Started in 2014, and this discusses the strategic planning guidelines, just this slide there. I'm going to go to the next one, which is the actual strategic planning guidelines. These are metrics. What does debt versus total appropriations look like? What does fund balance as total appropriations look like? Capital improvement that we're setting aside versus total appropriations. They're guidelines, they're goalposts that we're supposed to stay in. And green is good. So the very right-hand column is good. We're barely compliant. So guideline 1B, on fund balance, we're in compliance. Guideline 2, we're in compliance, which is the operation shortfall and how much is being funded by electric and water utility. Guideline 3A is the amount of surplus transfer. We're barely compliant there. We're transferring a lot. But I think that's reasonable in this particular instance because the utilities have been generating a fair amount. Guideline 4A, which is the debt service to appropriations, you can see that's slowly gone down. We have not taken on any more actual debt payments basically I've not taken on any significant debt payments. So we have debt payments for the joint meeting, but as a percentage, the percentage has dropped, which is good. I think it's appropriate. It's more of a pay-as-you-go type of model. And then finally, capital improvement, we'd like to get to, and I think next year we'll get up to 3.8 million. We're only at 3.5 million this year. That'll be where we're really funding things at an appropriate level. We're okay with 3.5 million this year because we have 1.6 million in the capital improvement fund currently right now. I was joking with my wife saying I was going to tell a story about her during the budget, and she said I better not, but I'm going to. When we were engaged, I literally had people come up to me and say, "Well, the frog got the princess here. I can't believe this." There's a story to it, I swear, and it ties in. And my dad called, and he goes, "I really like her. Great family." But I think she's a spender. He whispers it in the phone that she's a spender. I'm like, what are you talking about? She's very frugal. You all know her. She's wonderful. She's put up with me for 32 years. Bob Vogel was the spender. But Bob Vogel's not here this year, so I think we're going to have a little less budget spending going on this year because we just have to get our engineering situation intact. So that's why I'm tying in the funny story about my father and my wife to the budget, which is Bob Vogel was a spender in a good way, but I think this year what we have set aside in capital for capital projects, we may not do all of them. We may not do the slip lining in the sewers. We may not do certain projects. And by being able to do that, we're able to kind of survive with 3.5 million in capital. Hopefully it'll go up next year. Next slide. So we'll see if I get in trouble when I go home. So the other guidelines are not math guidelines. They're just, are we compliant in a general sense, and surplus in excess of upper end of guideline 1B is high, but we're using it to fund operations. It's not. I don't think that's a terrible situation with guideline 1C. Guideline 3B, we're compliant, which is the amount of surplus from the utility that's transferred. Guideline 4B is new borrowing. We're compliant there. Guideline 6A talks about property taxes being prudent and not moving high up or down significantly in any one year. Guideline 6B, the reserve for uncollected tax at 2.63%. If we, and I'm not going to ask Michael to flip back, but if you were to look at the budget, and where Tom and I were talking, Councilman Harold Putis and I were talking about this today, the reserve for uncollected tax is about $2 million. It's like, wow, that's a lot of money on a $35 million budget. It's not a $35 million budget that you should measure it against. It's $75 million in property taxes that we collect. And there have been years where we don't collect all the property taxes, and that's what the reserve for uncollected tax is there for. If we are successful in collecting property taxes, and we have been, Chrissy's done a great job, all that is the fund balance that you're spending the following year. So in 2024, we're spending $6.2 million in fund balance. Some of that is most of that is last year. A lot of that is last year's reserve for uncollected tax that falls to that. So it is really prudent and not, in my opinion, the right idea to change the reserve for uncollected tax, because all it does is keep us in a strong financial position. That would be something that would be flagged by the rating agencies if we were to consider doing something like that. That's administration's position on that. The next slide is one that you've seen before. I'm not going to go over it except to say that the property tax increase this year is $5.14 per month on the average home in town, so that's for the municipal side. We don't think that's too much. And then the last slide, which I think is fantastic. Ray said to do this, and he was right. This is a great slide. The mayor's discussed this. We've all discussed this in different pieces, but here it is all listed out, all the grants that we have won. This is unprecedented. This is wonderful as a CFO to see. I can't say enough how great this is. We've never in the history of the borough had anything close to this. $4 million from the Hartley Dodge trustees, $5 million from the Drew Forest, and then today, over the weekend, the $4 million plus from Mikey Sherrill and Corey Booker for the Drew Forest, $2 million in special appropriations for Walnut Street affordable housing, all the library grant, all this money adding up to $18,838,851. It's fabulous, and it's allowing us to do things that that are important. So with that, I will take any questions. Start with Eric.
Thanks, Mayor. Thanks, Jim. Thanks for going through this, and as Rachel mentioned at the top, thank you for all your hard work and pulling all this together and kind of steering the ship throughout the process here. As you know, we are hitting many of our strategic planning principles, and ahead of the introduction of the budget next meeting and some of the discussions, I'm hoping we can address maybe 2 additional priorities without kind of moving out of compliance or moving further out of compliance with those planning principles, and kind of not putting us in a sticky situation in any out years. So 2 of those things that I'd be looking to get your feedback on, and we talked about the one during the fire chief's budget presentation, is the possibility of fully funding the new fire truck, which I think is 2026 or 2027, I forget the exact year now. But doing that now, locking in the current prices, because every time we talk to them, the price goes up another 20%, and they're saying, hey, it might be 24, 36 months before you get that apparatus. So if we wait until 2027, we've got lots of escalating costs, and that apparatus doesn't go into service until 2030. So that would be one, if that's doable within the budget. And the second one would be the possibility of some relief on the tax increase side of things. As your one slide points out, we provide exceptional value for the municipal slice of the tax dollars. But I think given the stewardship of the administration and prior councils, that I think there's room in this to reduce that estimated 2% and maybe do something more in the range of like 1.7, 1.8. But I'll leave that kind of to you to suss out if you think that's even a possibility.
Sure. Let's talk about both. Michael, can you go back to the slide that has the municipal budget on it, just so we're in front of it? Going back. That's it. So we'll talk about the capital request first. A couple of options. We could authorize debt and know that we could pay it back. That kind of changes our strategic planning guidelines. Another option is we do have the 1.6 million in general capital. We're putting in 3.5, so we're going to have about 5 million. We're anticipating appropriating about 4 million of that. If you were to go back to the presentation that we had that had all the different appropriations. So if I would say that that's possible if we were to keep our powder dry or decide maybe in August, once we have a better understanding of what capital projects we can and can't do this year, and then see how much in prior ordinance we can cancel. If you recall, when we cancel a capital ordinance, it also goes back into the capital improvement fund. So if we have 1.6 million in there now, we need 3.8 million to fund this year. There's another about $700,000 for the remainder of that truck. We're almost coming to the bottom of the barrel. However, if we don't do all those 3.8 million, which I anticipate we're not going to do because of engineering, and if we don't and if we cancel some ordinances. So I would say I'm cautiously optimistic that if we return to this discussion in August, that we'll be able to do it. We don't need to make that decision tonight, but understanding that that's a priority to council, from council, will help us, will help Ray and I in terms of managing the capital projects going forward. So that's a really long, answer.
So Mr.
Yes.
Vogel, the short answer.
Sorry, I vogeled. I'm sorry.
So the short answer is you would not recommend increasing the capital improvement fund transfer for this year, but you would anticipate that we could probably have it come out of the total that's already in capital funds with prior and this year's transfer. And our biggest project we have is already been fully funded, but that's probably taking most of what's sitting in. So we have 1.5 currently?
1.6 of free available dollars.
And Cook Avenue has been appropriated at 1.1.
Well, you're going to ask me. Yeah, about 1.1 million. Yeah, Ray probably knows better. He's good with numbers. Yes, Mayor, that's it.
So basically, you wouldn't recommend touching the appropriations as we see it now?
I mean, one other option, it's not going to move the needle significantly, so we get increased by $100,000. Take an additional $100,000 out of fund balance, increase the capital improvement. It weirdly puts us in compliance with the strategic planning guidelines, so if you're like wanting to score points, that would do that with one of the strategic planning guidelines, and that would be fine too. It might make it a little easier.
So it could be a little from column A, a little from column
B.
But
That decision would need to be made at budget introduction, and I'm comfortable with doing that. So if you say, hey Jim, put 100,000 in now, I'll create the budget document that does that. That gets us even maybe a little more comfortable with making that decision.
I think that's where my comfort level would be.
Yeah. And then the second one is a little more challenging. Appropriations are going up 2.7%, and as I talked about, some of those appropriations, while they're being budgeted, is going up 2.7%. We know health is going up. We know others are, joint meeting is going to be going up. There's going to be other expenses. However, going from an increase of 2% in property taxes for existing ratables, which is line B3, down to 1.75%. I'm kind of looking at Ray a little bit. I think we both feel like we could go to that level. I don't know that we would. I don't think I would not recommend going below that. I think it's. I look at Bob because we always talk about small incremental increases every year. Talk to Rachel about that is important because we all know costs of everything are going up. So I would recommend if you're looking to do less than 2%, that administration would be comfortable maximum dropping it to 1.75%.
1,000 is it?
Exactly. Yep.
Thanks. Thanks.
We'll work our way around here, so Rachel and then to Bob.
Thank you, Jim. Looking at, yes, this same sheet, when we look at the overall appropriations going up 2.71%, but you mentioned a few examples that are going up. We anticipate they'll go up more than what we're budgeting for, such as health insurance, which seems to be the biggest delta between what we're accounting for here and what we expect to pay, and sewage processing. So, can you explain to me if the health insurance costs go up considerably more than this 0.22%? Not to be so basic about it, but how are we going to pay for it?
Sure.
It's not in here.
So we've always been very conservative on budgeting for health insurance because you don't know if an employee is, and I've always felt it's important to be super conservative with that. You don't know if an employee's going to come in and say, I got married. Now it's going to go from a single employee to a married couple. Oh, just had kids. I'm going to go from, I just got married and have a kid. So it's going to go from single to a family, which is a significant increase in costs. So we've always been conservative there, and so there's always been a little bit of wiggle room. So I'm saying we can reduce that wiggle room and still pay the bill. So I feel comfortable with that.
And we're
the same thing with the joint. Go ahead, Mayor.
And the percent is over the budgeted amount, so the wiggle room is coming from the percent over the actual.
Yeah, the actual appropriated amount. Same would be with the joint meeting. We're always concerned about big having to make a big true-up payment, which we actually had to do a couple years ago, was make a big true-up payment, but we've now, I believe, negotiated with the joint meeting and with Chatham that we're not going to do true-up payments anymore. We're going to do a smoother averaging of that. It kind of is unbelievable that it goes up so much. I don't know how the flows to the joint meeting can change so much. But so for that reason, I feel like even though the joint meeting is probably going to go by 5%, we only have it, going up by a smaller amount, by 2.6% in this budget, because the extra money that I kind of have set aside for that true up is never going to happen. So those are the two examples that I would use in that regard. And it gets more complicated with inside the cap, outside the cap, and budget flexibility and stuff like that, but I don't want to Google it.
And my other comment is that I'm in favor of the proposed upfront outlay for the carport. I really like the way that it seeds us, sets us up to make continued future investments that will be cost savings and cut carbon pollution. So it seems wise. I feel like our strong planning that has gotten us to this point allows us to do things like that would be beneficial to the bottom line and to the borough overall. So I'd like to pursue that.
And we are looking to do start researching the possibility of a carport for the police, which they're looking for to protect the vehicles, but it would also generate solar. And in prior presentations, you've seen that we are looking at solar at Public Works and maybe eventually at the pool if we can get community consensus at that location. Be nice, I'm sure, for the mayor to park in a shaded spot instead of baked in the sun. Everybody fights for all those spots over to the right in the shade, so this will give more shade over there, and it's a parking lot that doesn't require to be being plowed in the winter. So I think once the MRC solar carport is up, we'll be looking to advance other projects, so having that money would be great.
Agreed. Thank you.
Bob?
Okay, first of all, you did a great job. I'll come right out and say that. I guess I just have one broad comment. Somebody just walking into the room right now and hearing this would say, boy, Madison's in wonderful shape. They're rolling in the dough, so to speak. The reality of it is, this is a very prudent budget. What it's done is it's looking at how things are now, not anticipating that it's going to remain great forever. So, that kind of gets back to this whole, I remember the early arguments about fund balance and transferring money. Well, there's a reason for that, because we don't know what we don't know yet, and things can happen down the road. So I like the way this is set up. And the property taxes, it's a nice thing to do, but I remember the early debates where we had with 0 and 1%, you're cutting off your nose to spite your face with that, because down the road, you got to make up that difference. I think there's a lot of merit to what Eric recommended about the fire truck, because kind of like with the bus, the electric bus, if the costs are going to go up in the future, and this budget kind of looks at the future, what we could do, and if it's possible, is start to maybe move that fire truck a little closer and maybe get it sooner, because it doesn't make sense to pay more now or pay more down the road when you can get it cheaper now. It's kind of like when you buy a car. So if we can work that in, I think that's good. Beyond that, the other thing is when you looked at those grants, that's all wonderful, but there's a but to that. Each one of them are for a specific reason. They're not just going into the pocket of the borough. They're going to be used for a specific purpose. So again, going back to the budget itself, while the grants are nice, this really tells the story, and we're not spending too much money, we're holding back on certain things, and I think this is in the right direction. It kind of goes along with Madison's historic precedent of plan for the future, be thrifty, and really don't pay for stuff that you can't afford. And that's what this does.
Thank you for saying that. COVID came, nobody expected that.
Right.
And we had a worldwide pandemic, and it hit home. And we were in a relatively strong financial position. There were other towns, not that I'm going to mention any, Garfield, that had to have 12% tax increases and had to have serious service reductions and had to do what's called an emergency appropriation. And when you do an emergency appropriation, the state then has much more oversight over you. We are in what's called a self-review year. And we have 2 years of self-review, then we have a state review. So last year was a self-review, this is a self-review, next year will be a state review. If you had to do an emergency appropriation, your self-review or your state review every year. And you have to pay it back very specifically over a certain period of time. We had the financial strength to weather that storm, and we're now back on firm footing, but I'm cautious. And so I always want to make sure that we're in good shape. Also, I've said this before, but I think it's just important to reiterate. When we do the budget here and when we decide make these fiscal decisions, we get to touch the control. I think of it like a boat, and we're trying to shipping carrier. I'm pointing to Tom, and we get to touch the controls for a couple of months, and then we have to sit back, and we can't change anything. We can't change appropriations. We can't change revenue. If you own your own business and you get a new contract and you're getting more revenue, you can now change your appropriations. We can't do that here. So we always are a little more cautious with the amount of money that we set aside for rock salt. We don't know if it's going to be a bad year or a good year. So it generates fund balance. The fund balance then is used the following year, and that's that strength of fund balance and that strength of cautious, fiscal, responsible budget gets us through the tough times like the pandemic.
I'm just going to give one more example. Remember when Hurricane Sandy pounded New Jersey? Madison, thank God, had the money in its pocket or in the fund balance to take care of the new expenses that popped up here. Some towns had to go out and bond the money to repair their towns. We didn't have to do that. It's because we've always been very careful, again, as reflected here, about how we put money aside for the rainy day. And that's what this does, and it was proven back then.
$1 million for the crews from Louisiana and Dover, Delaware to come up. We were energized weeks before other towns.
Yeah, but they introduced me to Everclear, and that's good stuff.
That's not good. Moving along. You're done. We'll go to Tom.
All right, a joke went over my head. Tell me about it afterwards.
Everclear? Oh, well,
Okay.
For another day.
Sure. So one question, Jim, about something you just said wasn't really what I was going to ask, but midstream during the year, we can't change revenues, but we can receive revenues. Like as an example, if the old movie theater building is finished by May, they will start paying taxes in June. So that will come into the borough as an added revenue. You're just not accounting for it.
Goes right to fund balance.
Right to fund balance, but it's still our money to spend. How come, and maybe I'm missing this, I was just glancing at our strategic planning guidelines. Why don't we have any estimation for short-term and long-term revenue increases?
Within the strategic planning guidelines?
Well, anywhere.
Guideline?
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, it's good to have these guidelines about how we should function each year, and also some, capital expense budgeting and stuff like that, but it doesn't talk about planning for other things that are coming down the road, which is good because that gives you anticipation and it could be responsible planning. Like you're planning for the MRC carport, then you're going to plan for the next carport, you're going to have more savings unless it doesn't happen. But so we don't have that at all in there.
So capital's 5-year.
Yeah, we have a 5-year capital plan, but state statute doesn't want you to be anticipating revenues that you don't have. And state statute doesn't want you to be, it purposely has a levy cap, which means you can't increase expenses by too much in any one year. And it has a revenue cap, and you can't increase taxation by too much in any one year. So everything is small and incremental. And we can't anticipate revenue that we don't know if it's going to come in or not. But when it does come in, it comes in as fund balance,
right,
and we end up spending it the following year. And this year we're spending $6.2 million of fund balance, which is excess of revenues big one was interest income, right? We talked about that a couple meetings ago, where interest income, we anticipated at this, because we didn't know if interest rates were going to drop. I don't know this year if interest rates are going to drop. And we got this much, so that went into fund balance. Same with the rock salt. We anticipate this much to spend in rock salt. We really haven't needed a lot of rock salt this year. I don't know what it's going to be like at the end of 2024, but if we only spend this much, that becomes fund balance.
I think not, and not to put words in your mouth, Tom, but I think your question might have been less about this year's budget, where we have state guidelines to meet, but more of where we could be in 5 years and certain.
Our own internal knowledge.
I think though we don't present that, I think some of that goes into the thought process, such as health insurance. We know that those over the next 5 years will probably be well above the 2%.
Right.
And so we anticipate that. I think we're already anticipating on the electric side the fact that we know the contracts that are coming up are going to be putting more, slicing into the surplus, and the transmission costs will be going up. And so, not part of the presentation, part of the thought process, but I think it's a good thing that, maybe.
Yeah, that's planning, thank you, Mayor, that's planning for expenses, but I'm also just questioning about planning for revenue. When we finish installing all the water meters in the borough, we're gonna probably get a little more money.
Yes.
They're all done, that's the whole point, right? And then you also, I was looking at the debt, and I know you said this to me, I probably asked you a couple times, some of that debt is gonna expire within the next 4 or 5 years. Some sizable part of it, right? 2028?
That's MRC debt that's expiring, which is paid out of the open space trust fund, so that's not part of this, but
that doesn't even show up on your debt service?
The majority of the debt here is the debt for the joint meeting,
Yep.
and the debt for the big renovation we had here, and public safety, and actually we bought a fire truck many years ago. So those debts, and I'll get the debt schedule on those, Thomas. I do have a
It'd be good to know, right? So that maybe by 2027 or 2028. I remember
it's going down little bits every year, for sure.
Yes, sir. Fantastic, Jim. And I agree with Eric about possibly funding the fire truck if you can maneuver that. That would be a great idea.
Okay.
And I also am in favor of at least a review to see if there's any relief on the tax increase. If there's not, it's still very reasonable what you're proposing, but if there is some relief, we could be sensitive to just the inflation around the whole community. And then we know that next year we're gonna probably have some additional taxes for the community, not from us, but from the school budget. It's gonna be coming up with the capital referendum. So we have to just know that's gonna happen. Whether it's from the schools or from us, it's still for the borough to absorb. But that's it, Jim. You did a great job. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
John?
There we go. Thanks, Jim. I think, from my perspective, one of the things that's most telling is when we look at the list of grants that we're receiving, it just shows the amount of work that's happened here in the borough. $18 million is a striking number, but I think it also sort of highlights challenges and opportunities, because each one of those grants represents an opportunity to us that we are meeting by going for the grant, or it's a challenge where we've used a grant opportunity to meet that challenge. And it just highlights to me that while we look at this budget, and I think this is a very prudent budget and it's very well done, it's not as if we're flush with all kinds of cash that allows us to meet all the needs and all the challenges that arise. So I think we should view it that way, and we should view it that we are incredibly prudent in the way that we're managing this. I think this is my first year, obviously, on the council during the budget season. Professionally, I think you all know that I see a lot of budgets on a routine basis. This one, I think, it's very tight, and it's not lost on me that we're getting a lot done with a very tight budget. And again, the amount of grants that we're looking at, we should be happy that we're getting that grant money, but we should also realize that that's necessary money to do a lot of good work in the borough and meet a lot of challenges. So it's not as if, this budget gets us everything we need.
Thank you for those comments. I'll put a resident hat on. I'm Jim Burnett, resident, Main Street in Madison. I think what you guys have done are unbelievable. Saving the Masonic Lodge, getting money for the Drew Forest, getting money to have a passive affordable housing residence, the library grant, a fast charger for that. I just think it's unbelievable. That's it. Thank you. Jim Burnett, 16 Main Street.
Thank you, Resident Jim. And I think to emphasize what you just said and also emphasize what John said is to get these grants, it takes money, our money, to get more money. And so it's our good management that has allowed that to happen. I think, and you talked about some of the money that might flow back in capital, such as retired ordinances, but the other flow will be when we get reimbursed from Department of Transportation for our, think projects funded by the Transportation Trust Fund, which I gave a shout out for before, but that money, we have money coming back in for like Green Avenue, Greenwood, and others. When that money comes in, that goes right back to capital. So, and then we have the accessibility Dodge Field, which we have a major project in for through Jake's Law of $700,000. That would flow back to open space, right? But that will help us on one of the concerns, which is Drew Forest. Are we ready to attack that? So hopefully we have money that flows back in there. So we'll hear more about those soon, but again, that helps it. So just to capture what I think what I've heard is the concept of increasing capital appropriation by 100,000 and looking at what you think would probably be the maximum is taking the revenue from tax revenue down from 2% increase to 1.75 if that works. So you'll float those two in the spreadsheet and that's it. And that's what we'll come back with for introduction in 2 weeks.
Thank you for the guidance. I'll have that document ready in 2 weeks.
Council, I captured it. Consensus on that? We're good?
Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks, Mayor. Thank you, Jim.
Excellent. Very good. We now move on to ordinance for hearing. Will the clerk please read the statement?
The ordinance is scheduled for hearing, were introduced by title and passed on reading at a regular meeting of the council held on February the 12th and February the 26th, 2024. They were posted and filed according to law, and copies were made available to the general public requesting same.
I call up ordinances for second reading and ask the clerk to read said ordinance by title. Ordinance 9-2024.
Ordinance of the Borough of Madison amending and supplementing Chapter 195 of the Borough Code entitled Land Development regarding Stormwater Management.
I open the hearing for ordinance 9. Anyone wishing to comment, please step forward. Seeing none, I close the hearing.
Mayor, I move ordinance 9-2024.
Second.
Any council discussion?
Just a quick note that the planning board, well, this came from the planning board, but it went back to the planning board, and we, at the last meeting, gave it the big thumbs up.
And Rachel.
I just want to acknowledge the work of volunteers on our green committees who worked hard with our engineering department to improve and fine-tune the language of this ordinance to really reflect some of the challenges and the values we have here in Madison. So thank you to those committee members, our MEC chair, Claire, who I know worked on this. It was a group effort.
Thank you. And while it was required by state to update, as you mentioned, it was the values of Madison that took it to an even better level. So thank you. Any further discussion? Roll call vote, please.
We need a motion.
We need a motion to, sorry. No.
Did we have that?
Yeah, we had the
Oh,
motion. Yeah, we had the motion. Yeah. It's already had motion and second and
Yes.
discussion. Yeah. I thought I was losing that.
Yes. It's
Roll
me.
call vote, please.
It's me. What do we have? Ms. Ehrlich?
Yes.
Mr. Landrigan?
Yes.
Mr. Range?
Yes.
Mr. Harlan Budis?
Yes.
Mr. Forte?
Yes.
I declare ordinance 9-2024 adopted and finally passed and ask the clerk to publish notice there in the newspaper and file the ordinance according to the law. Ordinance 10-2024.
Ordinance of the Borough of Madison appropriating $15,250 from the General Capital Improvement Fund for funding of to purchase secure smart electric Knox Company key boxes.
I open the hearing for ordinance 10. Anyone wishing to comment, please step forward. Seeing none, I close the hearing.
Mayor, I move ordinance 10-2024.
Second.
Any council's discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Ms. Ehrlich?
Yes.
Mr. Landrigan?
Yes.
Mr. Range?
Yes.
Mr. Harlan Budis?
Yes.
Mr. Forte?
Yes.
I declare ordinance 10-2024 adopted and finally passed, and ask the clerk to publish notice thereof in the newspaper, filing the ordinance in accordance with the law. And we're now on to our second of two invitation to public comment. You may comment on any topic. Again, I ask you to try to keep your comments 3 minutes, but we give you a 1 minute grace.
Hi, Claire Whitcomb, 12 Fairwood Road. Regarding the water ordinance, I just want to say too that the zoning board proposed some of the initiatives in it, particularly in terms of impervious coverage and looking at the total impervious coverage on the property and not just the roof. And so there's been a lot of innovative thinking in the planning and zoning boards. And I think that we have some more things we'd like to go forward on. I mean, clearly rain is not a minor issue. And so in terms of protecting our aquifer, Drew Forest is obviously very important. And on behalf of Friends of the Drew Forest, I want to thank everyone here, and particularly Ray Cody and the mayor, for, you just don't get 4.1 million without a lot of behind the scenes work. And I know Michael Pelessier created presentations, and Cory Booker, you know, he's from Newark, he doesn't really know the forest in Madison, and getting that national recognition for this project is phenomenal. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Claire. And you were, last meeting, we were a little worried because we had no mention of the Drew Forest from the public, so thank you for bringing it back.
Say this, we had a streak. We didn't break it until this budget season, but the last time I commented it was 11 p.m. So we just thought we'd give you guys a rest.
All right. Thank you, appreciate it. And anyone else from the public? John?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, everybody. There's two items I want to talk about.
But now that you're a resident, John, you have to state your name.
My name is John Hoover. I live at 17 Overhill Drive.
Thank you.
The two items I want to talk about. One, shouldn't take too much time, and that is the presentations. I would like to request that the presentations be no more than 10 minutes. The two presentations tonight, one was 16 minutes long, and one was 40 minutes long. I'd like to request that they be limited to 10 minutes apiece. That gives us all the time to think about it and talk about it. We update each other during the year, okay? That's number one. That's item number one. Item number two is I have been informed that there are 20 municipalities that pay their municipal employees, the mayor and council, a total of $75,000 plus $75,531. They range from $2,400 minimum to $30,000 and $130 maximum. I'd like to request that we all think about it, and we talk about it, and we start a conversation to analyze what we should reimburse our mayor and council for. And that is, they should, at a minimum, they should be reimbursed for the expenses of traveling to and from whatever functions are required by the council and for the council meetings themselves. Okay, and those are the two items I want to talk about. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Thanks, John. Nice to see you.
It was good to have you here. So appreciate the feedback on our presentations. Obviously, we manage it based on the topic and try to be mindful of the topic and the public watching. And as far as reimbursement for elected officials, we do reimbursement for travel and direct expenses such as that. We are in the minority, certainly in Morris County, Only 5 municipalities do not pay any stipend at all to any elected officials, and so thank you for bringing that up, and maybe it will take care of it. It's been my policy, as I've watched other elected bodies attack that thing, that it should be done for a future body and never done for the sitting body. So, thanks for the input. Anyone else wishing to comment? Please step forward. Seeing none, I close this part of the meeting. We move on to introduction of ordinances, which there are none. So we move on to consent agenda resolutions. Will the clerk please read the statement?
Consent agenda resolutions will be enacted with a single motion. Any resolution requiring expenditure is supported by a certification of availability of funds. Any resolution requiring discussion will be removed from the consent agenda. All resolutions will be reflected in full in the minutes.
Mayor, I move the consent agenda, which is resolutions 103-2024 through resolution 110-2024.
Second.
Any discussion or any need to be pulled?
Just a comment, Mayor, on 108, if I may.
Yep.
So resolution 108 tonight appoints Robert Dunn to the position of fire captain in the fire department. This is part of the continuing unfolding plan to further enhance the EMS services that we get from the Madison Volunteer Ambulance Corps and expand and support them with additional professionals in the fire department. So Captain Dunn will become Captain Dunn and Captain Nunn. Look at that. Will be sort of heading much of the administrative work around the new EMS services. So that's the thrust behind that one.
Thank you. Any other comments? Roll call vote, please.
Ms. Ehrlich?
Yes.
Mr. Landrigan?
Yes.
Mr. Range?
Yes.
Mr. Harold Budis?
Yes.
Mr. Ford?
Yes.
There's no unfinished business. Approve vouchers. Will the clerk please read the totals?
Yes, from the current fund, $229,540.66. From the general capital fund, $177,370.54. From the electric operating fund, $90,459.46. From the water operating fund, $12,463.75. And from the trust, $198,253.20. The total is $708,087.61.
Mayor, I move approval of the voucher.
Second.
Discussion?
Are we missing a zero there? It's like the smallest one I've ever remember approving. It's fantastic, Jim.
Here we go.
Sure.
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Ms. Ehrlich?
Yes.
Mr. Landrigan?
Yes.
Mr. Range?
Yes.
Mr. Harold Budis?
Yes.
Mr. Forte?
Yes.
All right, there is no new business. Forte.
Motion to adjourn?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.